The Leap is about giving you the ability to explore your potential so you can keep up with the fast-paced world we live in. Leap into the future with Flo's broadband packages. Turbo 10, $75. Turbo 20. Turbo 30. And introducing Turbo 100. Leap. Let's evolve as people.
This is CC6 Newsnight Weekly Review for February 10th to February 13, 2014. It was the week in which government announced that Australia has withdrawn its offer of grant funding for Grenada's new parliament building. Government said letter of intent will be signed with or without the unions agreeing to a wage freeze. An accountant says retrenchment of public workers would be an effective way to deal with monthly $15 million deficit. In sports, 16 teams to face off in United Insurance Under-15 cricket competition. Details when we return.
Paint it, landscape it, accessorize it, renovate it, make it yours.
Your dream home is already built and waiting for you. Grenada Cooperative Bank's Independent Special offers attractive properties in prime locations. No legal fees, no loan fees, and special discounts on interest rates. And ask about our Property Hunters Day. Call or visit us today and make it yours.
Make it yours.
Large windows, large doors, small windows, small doors. At St. Lou Metal, the size doesn't matter. You order the size you want and we make it to your specifications. If you need our new heavy-duty casement windows or half-inch impact or laminated glass or any other doors and windows, no problem. What size? Any size. You get it at St. Lou Metal. And coming soon, PVC windows and hurricane shutters. St. Lou Metal, 19 Frequente Industrial Park, powered by Grenadian Innovation.
Thanks for joining us. I am Samantha Williams-Worm. When Tony Abbott won the elections in Australia on September 8th last year, he said the government of that country has changed and pledged to form a competent and trustworthy government. That change is now being seen in its approach to foreign aid. And on Independence Day, the news reached Grenada that grant funding promised from the land down under would not be realized as it refocuses its priorities.
Disappointed, completely shocked are some of the terms used by Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Business, Honorable Nicholas Steele, when he confirmed that Australia has withdrawn its offer to finance 50% of the cost of construction of a new parliament building for Grenada. Almost 2 years ago, Australia signed an agreement with Grenada to provide $5 million Australian dollars, approximately $4.5 million US dollars, towards the funding of a new parliament building. Grenada's old parliament building still lies in ruins in St. George's after it was destroyed by Hurricane Ivan in September 2004. In a media conference at his office on Wednesday, Minister Steele reported the bad news.
I will confirm that we received communication on February 7th from the High Commissioner, Australian High Commissioner to Grenada, who is resident in Trinidad, informing us that the Australian government has made a foreign policy change in which they will no longer be going forward with any projects within this region. It has come to a surprise to us, as it has to others involved in the project, both in Trinidad on the Australian side and here in Grenada on the technical level in terms of the architects and engineers.
In a letter to the government dated February 6th, the Australian government says it has decided to withdraw aid funding to Latin America and the Caribbean and focus on Asia, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific. This decision, Minister Steele says, will affect several projects in the region.
One of those projects is our Parliament building. of which the Australian government had pledged 5.1 million Australian dollars. A total of approximately 1 million Australian dollars have already been spent in the design phase of that project. And we are at the point of ready to go out to tender with that project. In fact, we have shortlisted construction firms. And we were informed, as I said, on the 7th of February, that the Australians would no longer meet their commitment of the additional 4 million Australian dollars.
The Parliament building is a high priority for the government, the minister says, and his office is already actively seeking to fill the $4 million gap which has been left by the withdrawal of Australia's offer.
The next step for the Grenada government is to salvage and make sure that we find other sources of funding for the project, and also at the same time, as I said, we are in discussions with the Australian government to see if we can have a change of mind from them on their position. Because in this instance, we believe that we do have a valid argument in that these funds were committed, this project is well underway, and we're at the stage now where it's difficult to turn back without significant costs to us, additional costs to us from that.
The change in policy in Australia comes in the wake of a general election which removed the Kevin Rudd administration, which had signed the agreement with Grenada. The new administration of Tony Abbott said in the letter to Minister Steele that globally Australia will still deliver $5 billion in aid for programs that contribute to prosperity, stability and security, but is refocusing its priorities to the Asian and the Pacific region. Beverly Sinclair, CC6 Newsnight.
Government is calling on trade unions to sign on to the 3-year wage freeze as it seeks to enter into an agreement with the IMF to deal with the ailing economy. But two ministers say they are prepared to sign that letter of intent with or without their commitment, but it may be at the expense of workers.
Minister of Economic Development, Planning and Trade, Honorable Oliver Joseph, says government will sign the letter of intent to implement the Homegrown Structural Adjustment Program with support from the International Monetary Fund by the end of February, even if the public sector trade unions fail to reach an agreement with regards to the 3-year wage freeze. Government has sought the assurances from the trade unions ahead of signing and submitting a letter of intent to the Washington-based IMF that they will not pursue wage increases for workers during the 3-year period of the program. Addressing post-cabinet briefing on Tuesday, Minister Joseph says government has given the assurance that there will be no job loss once the program is in effect, but that promise can only be a reality only if the unions accept the wage freeze.
We have said to the unions, all the 3 public sector workers unions, that we will preserve jobs. We will not go the route of retrenchment, but you will have to agree that there will be no increase. Because you cannot keep the same numbers and increase the wage bill. So I think you need to get a clear understanding that we have clearly stated there would not be retrenchment on the understanding that the unions will cooperate, preserve jobs. It's better to have people working than get increase for few and send home some.
Government officials have noted that 70% of government's recurrent expenditure goes towards salaries. Minister of Education, Honorable Anthony Boson, says if government does not go through with the structural adjustment program, there will be some uneasiness with regards to the social and economic development of Grenada.
By emphasizing those points, we are not making any threat. This is not a threat to the union. Far from it. We are not threatening anybody. We are not coercing anyone. It is not our intention to intimidate anybody. But what we are expressing is just pure, real facts. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The alternative will be total chaos. If we do not go through with this program, the alternative will be total chaos. Because it means that you'll have a country that you cannot govern because you have no resources.
The much talked about letter of intent was expected to be sent to the IMF since late last year, outlining government's plans to raise revenue and cut expenditure so that the structural adjustment program will take effect from January 1st.
We are hoping that we'll have signed the letter at the end of January, but as Minister Bosu went into detail and pointed out, why is it, the question might be, why is it we waiting? If we do not have if they don't sign, we will still go ahead with the letter. So why are we waiting? Well, we're waiting as they put it in detail. We are waiting because we want consensus. We prefer to move forward when we have consensus. But the unions indicated that they will meet on Thursday. That's TAO and PW, and then they will get back to us. So we're still waiting for that time. But by the end of, I would say, February, when we think we have given enough time, we will sign the letter of intent.
He says the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union and the Public Workers Union, two of the unions which represent government workers, are scheduled to meet with their membership on Thursday to seek their guidance on the signing of the letter.
The unions in a wage freeze is difficult to sell to the membership. As one president said, he has to face a next election with the union. If he signed that agreeing, then he think he doesn't have a chance. But we think that the union, though, has an obligation to take the information to the membership, let them have all the facts, so that you, as a president, would not be blamed or see it as as giving out, selling out. Because remember, if you're a union leader, and traditionally, unions are in the business of bargaining for increase. And for 3 years, you said, okay, we have agreed to the government.
Minister Joseph is pleading for all the relevant stakeholders to join in the efforts to reorganizing the island's fiscal situation, while Minister Boson says there is need for everyone's contribution towards solving the problem. Blossom Alexis Welsh, CC6 Newsnight.
Members of two of the major unions in Grenada met in St. George on Thursday to hold discussions and decide whether they will agree to a wage freeze or press on with negotiations for salary increases.
The Public Workers Union and the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union held a meeting on Thursday with their members who work in the public service to discuss the wage freeze proposal made by government that, if accepted, would be implemented during the 3 years of the structural adjustment program. The briefing session was held at the PWU building in Tantine, St. George, as government says this is the main issue that has delayed the signing and dissemination of the letter of intent to the International Monetary Fund, which would pave the way for Grenada to begin benefiting from the structural adjustment program. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Mike Sylvester, facilitated the meeting and spoke to CC6 Newsnight prior to the start about what he hopes the outcome will be.
Basically, I wanted to spell out the elements of the structural adjustment program. So we'll sort of go into detail and see how it will affect them, take whatever questions that they have, and sort of give them some assurance in terms of why we really need a program of the sort at this particular time in the country. And of course, deal with any other issues that they may have. It's a important decision for them. They have to be part of the process, and so we are sort of working with them to ensure that everything runs smoothly.
The much talked about letter of intent was expected to be sent to the IMF since late last year, outlining government's plans to raise revenue and cut expenditure so that the structural adjustment program will take effect from January 1st.
I think workers are concerned about the impact of the program on their own livelihoods. You know, we have been going through a very difficult period for quite some time. But I think we have to look beyond what is good for our own person and look at what is good for the country. And I think that is where we have to get persons to start thinking, because it's a sacrifice for all of us. And I think that the idea is to try to let them understand, be part of the process, know how it will affect them, and see how best we can move forward in this regard.
One of the main issues raised by the unions is what will happen after the 3-year wage freeze ends. But Mr. Sylvester says the state of the economy may determine that.
I cannot give any assurances in terms of what will happen afterwards. It's a continuous process. Of course, I think the unions will always have opportunity to engage with government. If I would want to believe that if at the end of the program, the program is successful, which we all hope that it is, and we start seeing benefits in the country, the economy is growing again, I believe that there are opportunities for negotiations to the benefit of the union, to the members and so on. But of course, I think more than that, we need a sort of long-term approach to how we deal with this negotiation. I think the program will, will try to address that as well, because we want a situation where, going forward, we have negotiations that are in line with the macroeconomic fundamentals of the country. So you don't want to have negotiation where the government, in fact, cannot pay.
The Public Workers Union represents approximately 3,700 public servants, while GTAU represents about 200. President General of GTAU, on his way into the meeting, Chester Humphrey, says the workers will ultimately decide if the wage freeze proposal is accepted.
Well, the workers will direct us what to do, how to respond to the government's proposal for a wage freeze for the duration of the structural adjustment program.
The other public service trade union is the Grenada Union of Teachers. Minister of Economic Development, Planning and Trade, Honorable Oliver Joseph, at this week's post-cabinet briefing, says government will sign the letter of intent to implement the homegrown structural adjustment program by the end of February, even if the public sector trade unions fail to reach an agreement with regards to the 3-year wage freeze. He says government has given the assurance that there will be no job loss once the program is in effect, but that promise can only be a reality if the unions accept the wage freeze. Blossom Alexis Welsh, CC6 Newsnight.
When we return, parliamentarians will no longer get money for their constituency offices.
You want your loved ones around to celebrate, especially those living far. And with Digicel Top-Up, Dad can help you bring life to the party and be part of the celebration. Ask him to send you Digicel Minutes. Receive free instant additional credit. And stay connected here and there. Ask your family abroad to send Digicel Minutes today.
The Leap is about giving you the ability to explore your potential, so you can keep up with the fast-paced world we live in. Leap into the future with Flo's broadband packages. Turbo 10, $75. Turbo 20. Turbo 30, and introducing Turbo 100. Leap, let's evolve as people.
Breeze removes stains in the first wash. The other detergents, not always. You have to wash it all again and use twice the amount. So which one costs more? Do the math. Choose Breeze. Unbeatable stain removal.
Welcome back. It is no secret that Grenada is not on economic footing, but government has pledged to preserve public sector jobs and find other means of cutting back on spending. But one accountant says this is not a practical solution, as the monthly deficit is unmanageable.
Managing partner in the accounting firm PKF in Grandance says he believes reducing the number of workers in the public sector is the only way for government to make any significant impact on the monthly $15 million deficit. Speaking with host Byron Campbell on Wednesday's edition of CC6 Current Affairs program, You Decide, Mr. Joseph says attempts by government to reduce spending in administrative areas cannot deal with the problem.
I still believe there is a lot of waste within the civil service and the government bureaucracy as a whole. There is a considerable amount of waste, right? I have heard that, look, we're trying to reduce our electricity costs, we're trying to reduce telephone costs. Is that significant enough? I don't think so. I have looked at some of the numbers that have been bandied around, and in my view, the savings are extremely small. It's going to make little or no dent in that $15 million deficit.
He says a bold decision must be taken to get to the heart of the problem, which is public sector salaries and other emoluments. 70%
of the income that is earned by Grenada is used to pay salaries, wages, allowances,
pensions,
etc.
Yeah.
I think we need to take a concerted effort and say over the next 3 years we are going to reduce that 70% to 50%. I haven't heard anything specific, but that is my suggestion, because you cannot do it all at one time, right? So in year one, it is my view that we should reduce from 70 to 60%, right? In year 2, you go down to 55%.
Government has introduced a homegrown structural adjustment program in order to secure another loan package from the International Monetary Fund, but the letter of intent to cement the measures to be taken as part of this program has not yet been signed. One key component is a wage freeze in the public sector, but the various unions representing the workers have not yet agreed to this.
What problems do you see here for the government in its inability to get
I think that the government certainly need to negotiate longer and harder with the unions, because it is in Grenada's best interest, in my view, to have a wage freeze, right? Otherwise, we would get absolutely no.
But the problem is you announce the wage freeze before you get agreement to the wage freeze.
Well, that's the difficulty. That's what I said. But you need to negotiate harder and longer, right? But it is something that is absolutely necessary, because without a wage freeze, you will have problems in accessing funds from the IMF.
Grenada's economic situation is in dire straits as the country has had to restructure debts and defaulted on $275 million worth of local and foreign loans to bond payments in March 2013. Online news reports have said that the Grenadian bondholders in the UK have formed a committee demanding to meet with the Minister of Finance, as all their attempts at engagement since last year March have been rejected. Janelle Andrews, CC6 Newsnight.
One major financial obligation is no longer the responsibility of parliamentarians, following a decision by government to reroute the expenses of constituency offices to the Office of Parliament.
Government is reorganizing the way payment of expenses relating to operations of constituency offices are made, and effective the end of January, the Office of Parliament will take up that responsibility. Minister of Legal Affairs Honorable Elvin Nimrod says parliamentarians in the lower House of Representatives no longer receive personal checks to assist with the operations of their constituency offices, as another means of improving the efficiency of government officials.
The parliamentary representative has one day in every week to meet with his or her constituents. And so the government was providing $1,500 per month for each parliamentary representative to finance the running of the office. This would include paying of the rent, it would include paying the personnel, paying for utilities, etc., etc. And may I say, from my own experience, that this $1,500, a lot of time, one has to go in one's pocket to really supplement this.
The key reason for the new arrangement is to ensure that no money would be going through any one of the parliamentarians' hands, which would be safeguarding the parliamentarians and all concerned.
In recent times, and when I say recent, I'm not talking this government, we have found that there were some members who had not actually conduct an office as such and was receiving this money. And so this concerns this government very much. And of course, in the spirit of accountability, we have now, or the government has decided to transform the office. And this transformation entails now each parliamentary office will go directly under the Parliament of Grenada, and the clerk of the Parliament will of course be the head, well, after the parliamentary representative, the clerk of Parliament. And then, of course, you would have 3 persons as staff in the office. And the monies will be paid directly to the employees, paid directly to the landlord from whom we are renting. And so no monies will come to the parliamentary representative. No monies will come directly to the parliamentary representative. And this really, as I said, is an effort to make sure that we are very accountable in terms of the public purse.
A guideline was established for parliamentarians to observe as part of the new changes, which outlines the maximum fee for rent, payment to staff, and other supplies for the effective operations and functioning of the offices.
This is already in effect. Supposed to be at the end of this month, of course, workers would have been paid directly from the Parliament. And so this is already in effect. And it lends, as I said, for more efficiency and, of course, better oversight and, of course, more accountability.
Blossom Alexis Welsh, CC6 Newsnight.
Caribbean nationals, including Grenadians, could benefit from another employment opportunity being made available to non-U.S. citizens, and the program should already be underway.
Cabinet has taken a decision to declare Pilot Hill in Telescope St. Andrew a National Heritage Site, and the project will be funded by UNESCO. The announcement was made by Minister of Economic Development, Planning and Trade, Honorable Oliver Joseph, during this week's post-cabinet briefing at the ministerial complex.
It will be submitted to UNESCO, and funding will be made available to help develop the site. So that is a very critical and an important issue. As you know, that the emphasis now is on preserving certain sites as heritage sites, and therefore Pilot Hill in St. Andrews has been now declared by the government as a heritage site.
He says the area has been an important part of Grenada's history, especially the big parish, and as such it should be preserved.
A very strategic position overlooking the Grenville Harbour, and it has certain characteristics there that we have been advised. And long ago it was used as lookout where the Caribs used to use it, so that's why they call it heritage site. It went way back. So this is like a fort, you could say like a fort. It's not declared as a fort, but it's something similar to that. And we have been advised that that location, in fact, that's why it was called Pilot Hill. You're looking, you know, the pilot, they will look for signals coming in. Look out, look out. Right, heritage, that will be a lookout point. So the Caribbean looking out to see when the ships are coming in. And so it has historical significance. And that's why we have decided to declare it as a heritage site.
Minister Joseph says it is a move that is necessary, and he urges members of the public to respect the site as it is one of Grenada's heritage sites.
So once it's declared, then certain activities are restricted, right? So you cannot, no residential property could be erected there. So that's why it's so important to declare it. So once you make this declaration, then a lot of the activities that people would have liked to conduct, they would not be allowed to take place because you want to preserve it in its natural site and then develop it through funding from UNESCO, because UNESCO will place money. They will advise on the best development that could occur there in order to preserve it. They're concerned about the natural vegetation, leaving it in its natural state. So you wouldn't see a big building, for example, going up there. So the first stage, as I said, is to have it declared as that, so you prevent commercial activities by setting up there.
During the Fed-on Rebellion of March 1795 to June 1796, Pilot Hill was a strategic point for the participants in the rebellion as they battled with Britain for control of Grenada. Blossom Alexis Welsh, CC6 Newsnight.
Coming up in sports, weekly program launched for young cyclists.
The Leap is about giving you the ability to explore your potential, so you can keep up with the fast-paced world we live in. Leap into the future with Flow's broadband packages. Turbo 10, $75. Turbo 20. Turbo 30. And introducing Turbo 100. Leap, let's evolve as people.
Life in Grenada. Aye, we have the spice, we have the flavor. I'm sorry that you're sorry, but sorry's not so good enough for me, baby. I'm sorry that you're sorry, but sorry can't dry my tears, lady. And each time we try, you come with your same story. Now you're sorry, but I'm sorry because I can't accept your apology.
Live on Community Channel 6 every Saturday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. It's Sound System Saturday.
Welcome back. 16 teams will once again engage in 1 month of intense cricket action when the 2014 United Insurance Intersecondary School Cricket Tournament bowls off at various grounds on the island next week, Tuesday.
The teams have been placed into 2 zones with hopes of dethroning last year's winner, St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School. Senior cricket coach in the Ministry of Sports and coordinator of the event is Rafel Crony.
We are properly prepared. I think everything is in place. to have another successful tournament come 2014.
Mr. Crony anticipates a more competitive tournament this year.
What I could tell you, I know that a number of schools have started preparing. And as you rightly said, PPC has come fourth and win the under 15 tournament. Some of the top schools like SAS and probably St. David's Catholic Secondary or some of the schools we are looking to, even McDonald College. So it's very, very difficult to call in terms of who's going to do well at the senior tournament. But we do expect these schools, the same St. David's Secondary and SAS, to be very competitive. McDonald College have been doing pretty well. PBC has really been coming of age. They have been doing pretty well, and we expect that senior tournament to be very competitive.
The top 2 teams from each zone will qualify to compete in the semi-finals scheduled for March 11th. Moving on, the St. George leg of the Scotiabank Kiddie Cricket Contest was held at the Royston John Recreation Ground in Tantine, St. George on Wednesday. 7 schools from the parish of St. George took on each other in keen competitive rivalry with hopes of moving on to a grand cricket festival in the month of March. Raphael Crony coordinates the program.
This has been going for the last 3 years. Actually, it's in conjunction with the Ministry of Sport, the Cricket Association, in terms of coaching in the schools. What has happened? We at the ministry, as you know, does a coaching program in the schools. And in conjunction with the Cricket Association, we have this playoff in all the parishes. So when we would have finished coaching in each of the parishes, we bring all the schools together to play against each other. And then we select the best team. And then we really round it off with what is called a festival event, which is to be held sometime in March.
Defending champions of the Scotiabank Kiddie Cricket Contest is Samaritan Presbyterian.
So even from that level, we are spotting talent. And we expect this year again to be pretty competitive. Samaritan is already qualified for the Big 8, and we are expecting again another good tournament.
The Grenada Cycling Federation has started a weekly program for young cyclists in an effort to mold them into professional riders that can represent Grenada regionally and internationally.
The program began a few weeks ago, and so far about 14 youngsters are participating in the weekly sessions with some of the senior cyclists in Grenada. Junior Telesford, who is in charge of the racing committee, spoke to Sports on 6 on Monday.
We teach them different riding techniques, whereas the corner, when you're going into the corner, when you should use your brakes and all of these things. It has been going well. As you know, the weather is hampering us a lot, but every Sunday we still have rides.
He says the ultimate goal is to get at least one rider to the Olympics.
I hope it doesn't take us too long, but we working, what should I say, very fast to get that, to get somebody up to that stage. Yeah.
Okay. What else is needed to get to that stage?
Well, we will need some sponsors as well. We need some like trainers, rollers, things like that, so that the kids could use and get themselves accustomed to. Yeah, which will help us to get there. If we had a program like this before, maybe by now one of us would have been there. But most of us started from, what should I say, when we actually big already, and not from a young age like the kids now.
The weekly sessions begin in the vicinity of the Youth Center from 7 a.m. on Sundays. The Cycling Federation is also planning 2 fun days for the participants in the middle and end of this year.
That's all we have for you in Sports on 6. A recap of the headlines is next. Recapping the headlines. It was the week in which government announced that Australia has withdrawn its offer of grant funding for Grenada's new parliament building. Government said letter of intent will be signed with or without unions agreeing to a wage freeze. And an accountant says retrenchment of public workers would be an effective way to deal with the monthly $15 million deficit. In sports, 16 teams to face off in United Insurance Under-15 cricket competition. That brings us to the end of CC6 Newsnight Week in Review for February 10th to 13th, 2014. Top stories from CC6 Newsnight can also be seen on our Facebook page, Flow Community Channel 6. On behalf of the news team, I'm Samantha Williams-Worm, thanking you for joining us.